to Apothecary After Dark. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Apothecary After Dark, Amityville Apothecary's official podcast where we talk about all the things we don't get a chance to discuss when the store is open. My name is Dina Rosenberg, co-owner of the Apothecary, and I'm here with my partner in crime.
Hi guys, I'm Danielle, and we have a very special guest with us today. We have our resident witch, local, Samantha. She is the best. We're going to dive deep with her, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about her special skills and her experience. So we're really excited to dive into today's episode.
Yeah, we're getting into it today.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about like who you are as a witch, what kind of practice you have, and like what your tradition is.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. So at this point, it's always a little difficult trying to measure how long I've been in the craft because it's been something I've been doing since I was like cognizant. So like it's just kind of always been a part of my conscious experience. You know, my family was really great where even my family who isn't always about this, they were like, oh, that's just Sam and her stuff, like whatever. Nobody really batted an eye at me like talking to dead folk. And then, you know, the other side of my family that was like into tarot cards, they were just, you know, one of us. And like they just kind of pulled me into the situation. I mean, some of my first memories of talking to dead folk, I was like 3, 4, and then it just kept spiraling out of control from there.
So talk a little bit about that. Like 3 or 4, would you just be in a room and have conversations and your mom's like, you know, Sam, who are you talking to?
Lots of times. My mom would catch me just yapping away to like the air. And at first it was like, wow, she's like so wow. And then it was like, oh no, she's having like conversations. Like there's like actual this isn't like an imaginary friend game. And it took her a minute because we had spirits in my house growing up the whole time. And you know, my mom had no idea about them and they weren't related, so she wasn't looking for that. It wasn't until I think I was about 4.5, I started seeing my great-grandfather, who we didn't have any photos of. He passed away when my mom was young, and like they were really close. And my mom, again, she'd catch me up all night yapping to the corner.
So did you like describe him to your mother, and then she was like, "Oh my gosh, that's..."
Yeah, I was. She was like, "Who are you talking to?" I was like, "The man." She was like, "What man?"
That would be enough for me to like get up and be like, "Time to go, kids."
Not disturbing at all.
I was a horror movie child. I'm just like the man, and she's like, "Okay," and then. As if I couldn't get any more cryptic, I go, I don't like the way he makes me feel. And she goes, what do you mean?
Oh my gosh.
And I go, he makes my chest feel all tight. And I feel like I'm being squished. My great-grandfather passed away. We're not sure the exact situations, but his car ended up crashing into a brick overpass.
Oh my gosh.
It literally accordioned, and he was crushed to death. And
nice.
yeah,
so physical mediumship.
Yeah, was picking up on it. And my mom was like, oh, okay, good night. And just kind of shut the door and left it. And then after my grandmother's passing, same thing. It was almost like she never died. Like the conversation just kind of kept going.
Wow. So then you have 2 different sides of the family. One was more steeped in practice. The other just was more accepting of your special gifts that they recognized early.
Yeah.
So you've told me it was around 12 or so that you really started your official...
Like getting to work.
So talk a little bit about what that is.
So death work is... It's one of those things that a lot of people in the craft, we joke, nobody decided to show up to this party. We were all just kind of kidnapped and dropped off here. And we get like Stockholm syndrome like into the craft. We're like, no, I promise I love it. While we're like wiping tears off of our faces.
What is a death witch for people who don't know? Because it sounds very scary.
Yeah. A lot of people either think it's very scary or they think it's very edgy. It's very like hot topic-y, and it's like... Okay. Some people like think we're living in Soul Eater. If anyone is an anime fan out there, you will have. It's okay. No. But some people think we're like fresh out of Soul Eater. But really, it's not that frightening, and it's honestly really sappy. Like once we kind of break it down to its core. So death workers Some of us are initiated, some of us aren't, and our practices vary from all over the world. Death workers exist in so many cultures, but really our core foundation are guides, gatekeepers, and caretakers for the dead. We hold their memories, we hold space for them. People who are stuck here, we help them move on. And like that's the more dramatic part of my craft. Honestly, the benign everyday part of my craft is cemetery maintenance and like going to and building a relationship with my local cemetery, with the guardian there, with the spirits there. You know, I keep a lot of the headstones clean, and like we're memory keepers. You know, a lot of cultures have this understanding that like a true death is when you're forgotten. Wow. And it's our job to make sure that people don't slip through those cracks, because some of the spirits in my care died like 200-300 years ago. You know, they are a blip on a family tree, and their family probably doesn't remember them. And like that's just life. That's just what happens. That's the cycle of things. Yeah. But like, I know their name, and I know they really liked banana pudding, and I know that they had 3 kids and a dog that wouldn't shut the fuck up, and I know that they had a nasty attitude and they smelled like cigarettes, and like I can tell you things about them, and I hold that memory, and I share it with you guys, and you guys take it, and you know, there's always these really sweet little moments. I can't tell you how many times I'll go to clean a headstone and it's their birthday, or it's the anniversary of their passing. And I'm like, oh, hey, like, and it's like, how long has it been since somebody sat at their headstone on their birthday? It's probably been like 100 years. Some of these people died forever ago. So,
you know, I think it's so interesting, because that's one of the things that, to hear you describe this, your benign part, I think it's like the most important part.
Yeah, like I think it's the best.
Because I think about death and dying, and I think about all of my ancestors, and I don't know where they are.
Yeah,
like I don't know where they are buried. I was asking my mom just a couple of weeks ago, we were in the car together for one reason or the other, instead of zoning out of my phone. I was like, hey, where's this one and that one, and what cemetery is this one in? I've never seen my great-grandmother's grave. Never been there. Yeah. Because her services were in Florida, and then they brought her up to New York, and I, for whatever reason, didn't go to her interment, and I just don't know where she's at. I think about my paternal grandparents, and eventually will
like
there...
family in Italy.
Yeah, like will there be, like where... So, like, I do think about, like, how many generations does it take before nobody goes?
Right. Yeah, before you fade.
And then for me, because I was talking to my mother about it, and she says, I don't want to go any place. I want you to put me in an urn, and I want to go with you guys.
Okay.
Sounds like your mom.
And
until when? Until
right, like, well, I think infinity? You just have to like keep like willing it to like willing. Like I feel like it's like.
But then here's the thing: what happens with great grandma's?
I think eventually, like, do you have to have rules where you start consolidating people?
Yeah. Just, like mausoleums, but for ashes.
Right, like you sort of have to be like, this is like the, like, instead of it being like an urn, it's like a big, gigantic, like 6-foot vase, and this is like,
well, you know, that's how
great down, and it's just,
well, that's how like big family mausoleums work. So they all, like, you get entombed in the walls, and then, sorry, I know grave facts. So you get like entombed in the walls. And like these are the ones that are in like New Orleans that have been around for forever.
Yeah, beautiful.
You know, it's like, how can 8 generations of a family fit in a mausoleum?
Right.
Well, they put you in the wall, and then after like 3-4 generations, that place is probably a little filled up. So what they do is they tend to push the bodies in the back, and they have an under storage space that works like a larger collective. And like they kind of, and in a weird way, it's like your family's all together. Wow. It's like you kind of there. It's morbid, yeah.
But that's interesting, because my parents passed away this past year, and they both wanted to be cremated, and then they wanted their ashes interred. Yeah. So that way we're not responsible. Like, what do we do with them?
Yeah,
you know. So it actually like brought us peace, and we can go there, and it still honored their their wishes. But it was really powerful when I took my kids to Ireland, which is where my dad's dad was born, to the family farm, and I spent time with my cousins there, and they took us to the family cemetery, and I was there with my children, and my dad's grandmother was buried there
That's so
alongside
cool.
with his dad. And it was just really incredible for so many generations
Absolutely.
in their homeland. Like, I got goosebumps and chills, and connect. And I actually did take some of their ashes to the family farm and left that on the family farm. Yeah. Like, it was just so powerful. So, like, what you're saying, it's so powerful and beautiful as we honor our ancestors and pay reverence to our family history and giving thanks to, like, all who came before us and that wisdom and traditions that's passed down to us.
Like, in a weird way, like, and I'm going to say a lot of things in this that might sound kind of morbid, but, like, a really big thing with death witches is that, like, we're not being morbid. There's a very comfortable, peaceful acceptance with things. Like, it's gonna happen, right? It's, like, not a secret. We all know that.
We're all gonna go.
We
eventually.
don't play pretend when we're having these conversations. And, like, I think if you're willing to sit in the discomfort, and if you're willing to recognize that discomfort isn't danger and that you're not unsafe, you're just uncomfortable, and if you're willing to, like, grit it and hold it and get out the other side, you'll see something really beautiful. I think we can see, like, you know, like the mausoleum fact. It can be really morbid to be like, oh, they're all together. It's also, oh, they're all together. Like, there's this, like, interconnectedness, and, like, you know, so when I say, like, we all slip through the cracks eventually, like, that is what's going to happen, you know? And I think it's so wonderful that your family has land that is so well cared for. And, like, you can sit in full confidence that your ancestors, you know, final resting place is going to be well cared for by your family for probably quite some time. But eventually, when life happens and that changes, that's what, you know, we're here to do. Like, same thing for your family who you don't know where they are in Italy or wherever. You can pretty confidently put your head on the pillow knowing that there's some death witch in Italy, like, making sure that your family's well cared for.
I love that.
And if, like, your great aunt is, like, maybe struggling to move on because she's still pissed about whatever, you know, like, there's probably some death witch down there who's, like, doing the work and is, like, helping her find her place. And, you know, that's kind of the comfort, is that, like, like, you know, we are here to catch these people because, like, shit happens. Death is messy, like, you know, and it's uncomfortable, but we're supposed to be, I don't want to say that we are, like, lanterns in the dark because, you know, the light chases the dark away and that defeats the whole purpose. You know, we're people who know the path and we're willing to walk it with you in the dark and be like, yeah, this is scary. Like, it is. Trust the process, man. Get out the other side. It's honestly, like I said in the beginning, way sappier than it is spooky.
How has your practice or just your working in the craft changed since you started and were initiated into it to now? Like,
a few things happened. So I started really, like, broadening my horizons after a while because, you know, going into death work, especially, like, the initiated route, it is all consuming and it kind of becomes your job. And, like, it took up, you know, so much of my time that doing other types of craft and exploring other types of craft was really difficult. And honestly, what helped a lot was lockdown because I had nothing to do. Right. And, you know, I ended up, you know, exploring and connecting with all these other people. I had nothing but time to read, and I started really exploring my horizons, and, like, that was really nice. But, you know, for a long time, part of my craft was helping people get ready to pass and helping them prepare mentally for that process. And then again, post-COVID, when it became a lot harder to sit with people as they were, you know, going, or to have any conversations with them or whatever, especially without any, like, medical clearance. It changed to starting to deal with people who had already passed on, who had been stuck here for some time. And that's become almost 100% of my practice now at this point. Is, you know, some of it is helping the living cope and get ready, but honestly, most of it is uprooting spirits that have just been here for a really long time and really need help. Because, like, there's not a lot of death witches who work with people who have been stuck for a long time, because understandably, there are so many people that are passing away all the time, and, like, our hands are full.
Well, it's interesting because during my Reiki master training and protocol, I took some specialized additional programs through my master, learning about helping those earthbound souls cross over.
Absolutely.
And that's a closed practice as well. So there's ways that you approach that, but it's very beautiful when you experience an earthbound soul finally
crossing,
comfortable and ready to cross over.
Absolutely.
It's very beautiful and uplifting, literally, like, energetically.
I mean, especially because, like, the way that death workers, and then initiated. We all do it differently. So what you can kind of be certain of, though, about initiated death workers, regardless of whatever culture our practice comes from, if we're initiated, there's a very, very good chance that the way we move spirits on is very different than like how a lot of other people are used to, whether that's Reiki work, whether that's candle work, whether that's, the million laying ghosts, quieting spirits, the million other ways that there are to cross somebody over. Initiated death workers, because we just have to take it a little bit of that extra step where we will exit our bodies as much as possible and walk you all the way to the veil. And I often make the joke that it's a spiritual baton race and you are the baton and I am getting you from, A to Z. Normally this would be the job of, the spirits that crossed you over when you initially were passing, but due to whatever reason it didn't work, trauma, whatever, it just, your passing didn't happen. I am now going to take up that role of a psychopomp, which psychopomps are often referred to with deities. They can also be referred to entities or, people in this case. Psychopomps are people who, quite literally walk people to the other side. So it's very personal. It's very involved. It takes a lot out of me. I know you were there one time to see me do it.
It was the wildest thing to see you physically do that. It's almost like you fell asleep.
Yeah.
Like she laid on the floor and it looked like she had fallen asleep and the house got very, very quiet and then literally the front door just opened and slammed shut. Like, so open, slammed shut, a painting fell off the wall, and then Samantha was like, oh, wow.
Packing up a lung.
I don't what did I just see?
I come up, I'm like coughing all the death out.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It was one of the most interesting things that I've ever seen. It was almost like it was scripted and not real. I'm like, are there cameras in the walls? Like, what's
being punked?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was, and there's been not one issue since she's done that. And the other, and it was also very important at the time because it was my family member's house that we didn't disturb like our dead, that we wanted to be able to still come and visit and come and go. So it was really just like a very
It was like a
thing.
no pressure moment. Like, I was like, oh, it's your family? Okay.
So, okay, I want to shift gears a little for the sake of this podcast because
Yeah.
it's so fascinating and we could talk for
All day.
hours.
We could do this all day.
So,
Kind of a whole podcast on just
as
this.
Samantha does our tarot readings, you can book appointments with her at the shop, and you don't have to physically be in the room. We can do virtual
I got
readings
clients
with
in
her.
Costa Rica.
So, yeah, exactly, all over the world. So, I think it's important for people to understand because of her training and her skills and abilities as a death worker, she's able to also and does channel the majority of the messages and her guides and deities and spirits. And also, we have a separate reading that past life readings are also available. So we can talk about that. But also, you also have the ability to identify who your deities and spirits team are. So those are three separate services. So let's first start with, like, as you're doing your readings, the channel messages from loved ones.
So
as they come through.
It's so funny because when loved ones come through, it's always really, it's a physical experience because, like I said, from my childhood, I experienced like physical mediumship. So sometimes, right off, I'll start and I'm like, oh my God, please give me back my lungs. And like, I'm trying to talk to people and I'm like, who's the smoker or who had cancer? Like who had a lung problem? And like, we'll start to pick that up. I'll also use cards. And it's funny because I really let myself be as much of an open door to the dead as possible because please be careful with that. I know how to kick them out, but like I let them be as much of an open door as possible. And it's so funny because I've had readings sometimes where, like I'll notice my voice changes a little bit. Like if I get too into it. I had this one client, her mother just came through so hard, and like the accent got harder, and the whole time I was talking to her, I talk with my hands, it happens, but like I was like this, and she was cracking up the whole time because apparently whenever her mom used to freak out at them, she was never she was a 2-finger pointer because she used to work at Disney, and she was like, she was stuck forever doing the Disney point, and the whole time I'm like, and you don't realize it, and you don't know it, and you don't want to talk about it, but he's stupid, and you know he's stupid, and like it's all, I'm like, this is aggressive, like I'm having a moment to myself while I'm talking, and that's usually how I know I'm channeling, is because I'm talking and speaking, but I'm not like thinking about what's coming out of my mouth.
The physicality is manifesting,
So I'm having like an out of body, like, wow, I'm like getting intense. This is a lot, but it's not me. And she's like, and you're doing this stupid thing with your sister. I don't know what the issue is.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Like, okay. And that's how a lot of the medium readings go, which is really funny. Other times, it depends on your family member. If they were laid back in real life, they're probably not going to have me do cartwheels. But if they were a character, it's probably how it's going to stay.
Oh, that's fun. So what about your services where people can book that you're able to identify your spirit team of deities, gods, support, because you did it for me and for Dina and the staff, and it's mind-blowing. It's very cool because Samantha goes into not only who's with you, but what purpose they serve. So talk about that. That's neat.
It's like a rite of passage when you come to work at the store at this point. But basically, with deity readings, everybody has different gifts, and for me it was always, some people can talk to animals. For me it was the dead, and I've heard it called a bunch of different things. The most simplest one that I tend to go by is just a god phone. Which I think is hilarious. I think
That's
it's
pretty
hilarious.
cool. I like it.
One of my really good friends, they're Pequot shaman up in Connecticut, and they're the coolest person to ever live. Hi, Moon. Coolest person to ever live. And they're like my go-to person when I need a reading. And they did the same thing with me. They were like, oh yeah, no, babe, you're a god phone. And I was like, you say that like that means something to me. I don't know those words. And
cool.
She was like, yeah, you have like some people have open, easier channels. And for me, connecting to, deities, spirits, angels, that's always I've kind of done it without thinking. It's always just been like excuse me, and like I get answers. And I've been really, really lucky with that. And even sometimes if the answer is no, like I remember one time I called Athena to like work with me, and she was like, no, babes, like I have nothing to teach you, love you, bye, and like left. She was like, call your mom, go take it up with Aphrodite. And I was like, oh, and I was like, yeah, that's fair. I probably don't need 2 war goddesses on my team. It's a bit much.
Yeah.
So, like being a god phone, it's an easy connection. If they want to talk to me, it comes through pretty easily. So when I sit down and do people's team readings, it's a silly image, but it's almost like a theater, like I'm a Hellenic polytheist, so I'm gonna say amphitheater, but it's like an amphitheater opens up behind you, and I see all these people sitting in chairs, and some of them are right up at the front, some of them aren't even sitting, some of them are directly behind you, like on your ass, and then like others sit a little further back. Some of them are fully in shadow because they either don't want me to know, or they're not ready to work with you yet, or they're still deciding. And, I really just talk with whoever comes in the moment. But people's spirit teams change, I had Freya in my life for a really short period of time. She showed up, she whipped my butt into shape, and then she left. And, she's probably going to come back when I have a kid, because like a witch in a fairy tale, she's claimed my firstborn. And, I couldn't be happier. I couldn't think of a better guide for my kid. But, like, it's weird to have moments like that. It's hard to get used to it, because the amount of times, like, I'll just get pokes and pings with things, and sometimes I think I'm crazy, and then 5 minutes later I'm like, oh, I'm not crazy.
Well, in my case, you named 4, and some were very obvious, like the Blessed Mother. I've always felt the presence from the compassionate standpoint.
Also, just ancestrally,
that totally resonated. But then there was one who you said was kind of standing back in the shadows and was more hesitant to step forth, and that was Cernunnos. Yeah. And it made so much sense when she brought that to my attention, because he's the horned god of the forest, of the elder. God. And I find my peace, and I regroup and I reground when I'm out in nature, immersed in nature. So, when she said that and started explaining who he was and how he supports me, I was like, well, of course, that's when I feel safest. That's when I feel nurtured. That's when I feel replenished. So, like, there's others that I won't go into, but it's really fascinating, because as you learn more, you're like, oh, I totally relate that
Sometimes
to
they
my
line
life.
up
Yeah.
beautifully. Other times it's like, oh, damn it. Like, that was you. Like, you got checkmated by Jehudi.
It can be things we need to work on, yeah.
And, which I tell people Jehudi tends to do. I've never had a single person that Jehudi claims that doesn't go, son of a bitch, like, when they figure it out.
All the time.
You know, the god of chess likes to
Well, yeah,
play chess.
talk about that.
Yeah, when Sam was like, oh, like, and it wasn't even like I even sat down for a reading. I was just in the kitchen. I'm like, so who's here? And she was like, huh. she's like, I see you right over her shoulder, like right there. But the interesting thing is, like, for Jehudi is that my very first tattoo in the late 90s was of an ankh that. Back in the late 90s, tattooing was still illegal in New York City, and there was only very few tattoo parlors available to get work done. And I was like, of course. Like, literally, he's on my back.
Yeah.
So it's...
And the hawks.
Yeah, they'll always see... So I could see hawks everywhere. So it's just really beautiful. And I think how you take the information is up to you, just because you know who these... deities or angels or guides are. It doesn't mean that you have to have a full-on devotional practice to them, but it's great to sort of have a better understanding of who's just around you energetically.
We're not trying to cause like a crisis of
No.
anybody.
So Sam is available, as Danielle said, both in person and virtually, Mondays, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Yeah.
You can make the appointment on our website, which is shop.amityvilleapothecary.com. There's a link called bookings that you can just drop down and set it up yourself. You don't even, or you could call the store, but you don't need to. You could, because nowadays, who wants to speak to human beings?
Well, and she also does custom spell work as well. So that's in addition to all of these types of services.
That might need to be the episode 2.0.
That's totally separate.
Yes, we'll have to have Sam come back. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a card pull to lean into the energy of the next 2 weeks for the collective. And of course, Samantha is going to join us.
Of course.
I already pre-shuffled mine, so.
Same. Okay.
But showmanship.
Shooting it everywhere.
Hi, Aphrodite.
Exactly. Well, you were talking about her, so.
Just one, please. I don't want much else.
I wish I could shuffle like that. Like, that's what I'd like to be able to do.
There you go. There you go. Oh, well, that's appropriate.
That's really funny because when I say all the time that, like, without blowing smoke up everybody's ass, I'm literally like, when people asked me what I wanted to do when I was a kid, it was like, be a witch. And people were like, that can't happen. And I was like, watch me.
Well, why don't you say what you pulled?
Yeah. I got the Six of Cups. So, you know, it's this deep connection to like our inner child and like taking time to nurture that. It's also like allowing yourself to be brought in and like welcomed and nurtured and cared for. And I think that's just a really mushy way to like describe a lot of my experience here.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, God.
Well, she said hi Aphrodite because I got the Lovers, and you know, there's this beautiful, gorgeous connection shaped like yin and yang, and there's a lot of energy spinning. I mean, it was in reverse, but I don't think it matters. I just think it's really just like that connection that we're talking about. Yeah. And I see the swirls as I interpret this card as infinite love.
Also, the Lovers in reverse is so much about loving yourself and like bringing that energy inwards.
Yeah.
Which, especially with the Six of Cups, it's like love yourself, nurture your inner child.
Yeah.
Let it go.
let
it the fuck go.
Right, like stop. Right, let it go. Five of Wands.
It's the merry-go-round of bullshit.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's literally what I call this card.
That's a good one.
Because you're having the same arguments with the same people, and it's just around and round and round you go. Because nobody's trying to communicate, everybody's trying to win. So like,
it's actually like the connection is all
take care of yourself instead.
Yeah,
there you go.
It's true, and you know, time is infinite. So you know.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure you are letting us know what you think about the episode. Your comments mean everything to us. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. You could find us on all the social medias at amityvilleapothecary.com. I don't know why I always said .com. At Amityville Apothecary. Our website is shop.amityvilleapothecary.com. And we will see you guys next time.
Thanks so much.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to us today. We look forward to connecting with you again soon, so be sure to come back for the next episode.
And make sure to follow us on social media. It's the fastest way you can get in touch with us at Amityville Apothecary, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. And of course, like, subscribe to this podcast. We are eternally grateful for your support.